Joining me live in the studio for the special live coverage of the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II is His Majesty's Ambassador to the State of Kuwait, Her Excellency Blinda Lewis. Good afternoon, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure having you here with us today during this live broadcast. And I would personally would like to start off by extending our deepest condolences for the passing of the Queen.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, let's begin at first. How do you see the significance of His Highness the Emir's representatives' attendance to the Queen's funeral?
Well, I think in many cultures, somebody being present, being personally alongside the family who are grieving is very important. So His Highness the Crown Prince travelled to the United Kingdom yesterday. He's had the opportunity to meet with His Majesty King Charles III yesterday. There was a special reception for GCC leaders, which of course His Highness the Crown Prince was part of. I've seen some lovely photographs of His Highness talking to King Charles III. And I think that special audience for GCC leaders, of course including Kuwait, reflects the very special relationship that the United Kingdom has with this part of the world. So he is there, the representatives of His Highness the Emir are there to show not just respect but also affection and the enduring bonds of friendship between the royal family and the ruling family, and between the state of Kuwait and the United Kingdom.
It's a difficult time, especially trying to get all those head of states in the center of London to attend this funeral. We're actually curious. Do you have any details about the service that's going to be performed today?
So my understanding, and I was watching some of the coverage this morning before I came to join you in the studio, is that it will be quite a traditional service. What was really striking was watching the funeral procession, watching the pallbearers carrying Her late Majesty's coffin down some very, very well-known streets and roads, going past landmarks that so many of us, so many viewers will have stood outside of and taken selfies of themselves, and now all of that backdrop is completely transformed into a very sober, quiet, respectful kind of atmosphere. So I watched the coffin being taken into the church, into the abbey, which of course was full of people who wanted to show their affection and respect. There's a beautiful choir singing, prayers will be said, there'll be a full funeral service. And it's an opportunity for people to think. Sometimes when the music's playing, it's quite helpful to stop and reflect. But I do hope that, as well as this being a very sad occasion, I hope it's also uplifting, because Her late Majesty left us an enduring and valuable legacy on so many different fronts. We have so much to thank her for. And I think it's also a time to look to the future too, and to look forward to the reign of His Majesty King Charles III.
Your Excellency, let's talk a bit more of the historic relations between the United Kingdom and Kuwait. I'm interested if you could shed some light, starting with the 1899, the Anglo-Kuwaiti Treaty. Kuwait's independence 62 years later, in the spirit of close friendship. Can you elaborate on the significance of these two events? Yes,
and I think that that term friendship is really important, both in 1899 when Kuwait asked the UK if they would provide some kind of protection and security, and of course the United Kingdom agreed to help support and protect an ally. But also in 1961, when Kuwait wanted its independence, the UK agreed. There was no argument, nobody fell out, there was no disagreement. It was a symbol of the huge development in Kuwait, and a recognition that 1961 was the right time to have a different kind of diplomatic relations. And the agreement in 1961 and the letters that were exchanged talk a lot about friendship. They talk about continuing to act in the spirit of friendship. And then of course when Kuwait's independence and sovereignty was challenged, not many weeks after independence in 1961 by a neighbour in the region, of course the UK was there to stand by its friend. And again in 1991 we were there to help and protect our friend Kuwait.
Your Excellency, if you don't mind, if we can try to get our correspondent in London, who will be joining us live, Jamal Shaheen, who is actually covering the funeral. Jamal, are you with us?
Hello, I hear you.
Good afternoon, Jamal.
Good afternoon.
Jamal, tell us the latest update on the service of the funerals of Queen Elizabeth II, please.
I don't know what we can do, because after 1 minute or 2 minutes, the whole nation will keep 2 minutes silence for Her Majesty the Queen, because the service at Westminster Abbey will finish after 2 minutes, and then we have 2 minutes silence in the whole UK. But let's start from what I can see. It is very emotional and traditional. People here have a mixed feeling. They feel very sad and sorrow for Her Majesty the Queen, and it is also feel this is something amazing to see this ceremony, which nobody seen before. The funeral itself is an opportunity for people at home and abroad to mourning the passing of Her Majesty the Queen, the longest one in the UK. This is not only for Her Majesty's reputation in UK, but also his amazing reputation as a Queen of the world in the whole globe. But if you look to the ceremony, this ceremony is take us to like the Queen Victoria near 150 years ago. The carriage, the state gang carriage who carried her body, it was used before for the funeral of the Queen Victoria. And now it's in the care of the Royal Navy since 1901. And this carriage also used for King Edward, King George, and King George V, and Winston Churchill, and now Her Majesty the Queen. Look at what we can see. People don't realize how much this ceremony is amazing for amazing Queen. The King, Charles III, requests the flower, which is in the coffin of Her Majesty. Traditionally, he used it from the garden of Buckingham Palace, Clearance House, and Highgrove House, where the Queen loved all of this kind of flower. It's something take you to some very traditional. This is a wise reputation of the UK ceremony. It's amazing, and the people still have a mixed feeling about how they feel sadness for Her Majesty the Queen and surprised with the amazing ceremony.
Thank you, Jamal. We'll check back with you later on the day to find out more. The late Queen Elizabeth II holds a special place in the hearts of the Kuwaiti people, as she was known for her continued support and close relations with political leaders during the stages of her reign. Let us take a look at this report on the Kuwaiti-British relations.
A special and unique case which brought together the late Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom on one hand and the state of Kuwait, its leadership and people on the other hand. 123 years of distinguished relations and mutual interests between the year 1899, which witnessed the signing of a bilateral document between Kuwait and Britain, and the year 2022, which witnessed the sunset of the Lady of Buckingham Palace, Queen Elizabeth II, after more than 70 years in the rule of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, to be succeeded by her son King Charles III, to complete the journey of those unique relations spanning more than 12 decades. The late Queen reign has witnessed 6 Kuwaiti rulers, His Highness Emir Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, and 5 departed rulers. The late Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salim Al Sabah, who attended her coronation ceremony following her ascension to the British throne. The late Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Salim, the late Emir Sheikh Jaber Al Ahmed, the late Emir Sheikh Saad Al Abdullah, and the late Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed. In a clear indication of the importance of the state of Kuwait, Queen Elizabeth II and her husband, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, made a historic visit to Kuwait in February 1979, and she was the first royal figure to visit the Gulf region, as where she was received by the late Emir Sheikh Jabir al-Ahmed al-Sabah. At that time, the Queen was the first official guest to visit the newly built Kuwait Towers before opening the towers to the public. Not only Kuwait International Airport and Kuwait Towers were inaugurated on this visit, but also oil production began in one of the Ahmadi fields. While Elizabeth II was the first to land her plane at Kuwait International Airport, she was also the first to leave by sea from the port of Shueikh. The visit of the late Emir Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jabir al-Sabah to the United Kingdom in 2012 is considered one of the most important visits in the Kuwaiti-British relations, and it has many symbols. The Queen awarded Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed the Grand Order of the Bath class in special honor from Queen Elizabeth and in appreciation of the strong ties and relations between the two friendly countries. And this visit was not the first official Emir's visit to the United Kingdom, as the first was in 1919 by the late Sheikh Ahmed al-Jabir al-Sabah, and the second official visit was by the late Sheikh Abdullah Salim in 1953, and there is also the third visit by the late Sheikh Jabir al-Ahmed in 1995, and finally the late Emir Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Sabah in 2012. These decades of relations between the two countries were punctuated by numerous mutual visits, including 2 visits by King Charles III, who was the British Crown Prince at that time, the first with his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, in 2007, and the second in 2015 with an accompanying delegation, as well as a visit in 2006 by Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Prince of Wales, who was the Duke of Cambridge. At that time, Prince Williams also visited in 2019.
Welcome back to the special live coverage of the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. We are still here with us is His Majesty's Ambassador, Her Excellency Blinda Lewis. Your Excellency, let's go back to our discussion about the ties between United Kingdom and Kuwait. Tell us more about the bonds between Kuwait and the United Kingdom were strengthened immensely during Queen Elizabeth II's reign.
Well, I think perhaps because Elizabeth II's reign was so long, 7 decades, she was the source of continuity through a lot of change, and a huge change for the UK was moving from empire to Commonwealth and to different diplomatic relations with other countries, for example in the Gulf region, including Kuwait. So we moved from protectorate to an international diplomatic friend under her reign. But just as the report alluded to, there were a lot of visits as well, and I think each time a leader or ruler meets another person and you can sit down, you can have a conversation over a meal, you can see the other person's country and see the best of their culture. I think it really strengthens those bonds immeasurably. I was told that King Charles III has visited Kuwait 8 times, the first time in 1989 and most recently in 2020 to offer his personal condolences at the passing of the late Emir. So I think there's been a lot of travel in between the two countries, and of course members of the royal family and the ruling family will travel almost incognito to each other's countries to have a lower profile visit and enjoy the countryside and the seaside and the fishing and the food. And so I think there are lots of shared interests, and those visits serve only to bring the two countries closer.
Speaking of those visits, and as we saw from the report earlier, in 1979, Queen Elizabeth made a historic visit to Kuwait. How important was that visit?
So that was a very important visit, and we've got lots of beautiful photographs taken from her trip up in the British Embassy residence, and we enjoyed some of them on screen just earlier. There were lots of firsts, lots of precedents set during that visit. So Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth was the first visitor to arrive in Kuwait by Concorde. She was the first official visitor to be welcomed to Kuwait International Airport. She was also the first official visitor to go to the Kuwait Towers, even though the building work on the towers had been completed a couple of years earlier. And there are some fantastic images where you can see her sitting in the shelter of a traditional tent and watching, we're not quite sure what, some kind of cultural or sporting display. And there are lots of pictures of her from that visit where she's not looking at the camera. We have the official sort of state photograph ones, but we have lots of interaction where she's talking to Kuwaiti friends and sharing a joke, and they're both looking off into the distance at the same thing, and the person looking at the photograph doesn't know quite what they're looking at or what they're joking about. But this sense of rapport and being completely at ease, being so happy to be here, it really shines through in those images. And then she sailed off on Royal Yacht Britannia to Bahrain to continue her tour of the region. So I think she had a wonderful time here and had very, very fond memories of that visit to Kuwait.
And she's in the heart of all Kuwaiti people. There's a long history that ties our people with the United Kingdom. But speaking more of those visits, as you mentioned, King Charles III had multiple visits in the past to Kuwait. Members of the royal family have visited Kuwait over the years. How significant are those visits in strengthening the bilateral ties between the two countries?
Well, there's really no substitute for that face-to-face contact, and I think a lot of us have experienced that through the global COVID pandemic, where we were trying to work normally through Zoom and with Skype calls and things, and it's just not the same as being able to sit down with somebody. So Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, has visited Kuwait 3 times, and His Highness, now the Prince of Wales, Prince William, formerly the Duke of Cambridge, he visited in 2019 and seemed to have a wonderful time, went out into the desert, as well as doing formal calls, of course, in the city. So I think that's very important, and also to be able to connect with the Kuwaiti community back in the UK. We have many business people who spend a lot of their time in the UK, and also lots of young Kuwaiti students who are continuing their education in the UK. And I think for the royal family and for other dignitaries to appreciate the country that those young Kuwaiti people or older Kuwaiti people have left behind to come and visit our country, it's really important to be able to share in those cultural reference points and reflections.
Your Excellency, we've talked about members of the royal family visiting Kuwait. I would like to hear your insight of one of a very important visit of His Highness the late Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jabr Sabah in 2012. What can you tell me about that visit to the UK?
Yeah, so this was a very important state visit. This was the visit where a number of treaties were signed between the UK and Kuwait, and it was also where we agreed to form the joint steering group, which is still working today. We're looking forward to the next iteration of it, hopefully next month. And it's a way of trying to guide all the different bilateral initiatives that we have. So we have working groups that cover cyber, education, healthcare, defence and security, lots of different areas of activity. Of course, trade and investment are hugely important to both of our countries. And the framework that was agreed upon during the course of this 2012 visit, it still sets out the guiding principles of how ministers meet every 6 months, and the working groups get together much more regularly than that to make sure that we can really do our utmost together on areas of joint interest. And
in light of this joining to help develop and flourish those fields and increase the bond between the two countries, what can you tell us about some of the cooperation that the two countries are engaged in currently?
Well, one of the things that we're looking forward to next year is the 70th anniversary of the Kuwait Investment Authority, the oldest sovereign wealth fund in the whole world, and we're honoured to play host to the Kuwait Investment Office in London. So we want to look at how we can work with Kuwait and with the KIA to be able to celebrate that long enduring relationship But we're busy in lots of different fields, so we have record numbers of Kuwaiti students coming to some of the best British universities, both graduate and undergraduates. And I find that a lot of people that I talk to who've studied in the UK, because they've come and had lots of formative experiences and travelled around, and it's been more than just, you know, maybe a couple of weeks through the summer. They've actually lived there and done their shopping and opened a bank account and made friends that they've kept for their whole lifetime. So that's really important to us in terms of enduring bonds with the next generation. Healthcare is also something that we work together closely on, and defence and security is hugely important too. So we have lots of defence and security fairs, but also being able to host delegations to come to spend enough time to be able to understand the proper detail about excellent British companies in lots of different fields. So it's really important, and of course it's not very far away. You know, it's barely 6 hours on a direct flight, and Kuwait Airways is putting on more and more flights to the UK, not just into London, into Manchester as well. And I understand that those flight routes are very heavily booked because there are so many people from Kuwait who want to come and visit us in the UK. I'm really proud of that.
I hope so. His Majesty's Ambassador to the State of Kuwait, Her Excellency Blinda, it's been a pleasure having you here, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.